My pastor tried to sleep with me.
Mm.
I do have to give you a backstory so you can understand the severity of this situation. This did not happen at my current church. This happened maybe like 4 or 5 years ago. For
Okay.
obvious reasons, I couldn't speak about it then. It's too fresh, and I honestly was going to keep it to myself outside of anybody else that went to the church from finding out, especially his children. His wife is my mother's cousin. What does that make us? Cousins, I guess? Cousin-in-laws? I don't know. But he was family. I don't just mean like a mere relative. Like, this is someone who we went to the beach with, we would go out to eat with. His children were super close to me and my siblings. We were heavily in the church. So we saw him and his family all the time. So to dive a little deeper, my mom is a minister. So outside of whenever he would preach, let's say he had to go preach at another church or maybe was out of town or was sick, that's when my mother would step in and she would preach in his place.
Right.
He grew up in the church probably like 5 to 6 days a week, from choir rehearsal to praise dance to Bible study to church outside the walls. We even did Bible study outside of church, and she like planted a very deep, heavy seed of faith into me and my siblings.
Okay. Well, I have to say this, first of all. This story's insane. Right off the bat, it's crazy. You should know, however, guys, we have a lot of heavy topics today. So hope you have your coffee in hand. The coffee is strong in this episode. So in the first segment here, we have a woman who's exposing a pastor for cheating. Millions of views on this video that are definitely going to affect his whole pastoral career. I don't know if he's still preaching. If this gets out, of course, I'm curious to know what you think. Let's get back into it.
Her and my father, and I obviously thank God for that, because that is one of the main reasons why I was able to develop a real relationship with Jesus now. Suddenly, one day, we just up and left the church. This pastor met me when I was like 7, 8 years old. So he's known me since I was a little girl. He baptized me. Him and my father were at one point sort of kind of like best friends. I had to explain that part so you can see how sick he is. If there's anybody watching this video that knows me in real life and grew up with me, obviously you know what pastor that I'm talking about. I don't know how far this video is going to get. I don't know if this video is going to get a lot of views. I don't know. But in the event that it does, I'm not sorry for saying any of this at all.
It already did.
I do apologize to his children, because I know that this is probably the first time that you're hearing about this. I'm not going to say his name, obviously, or put any pictures or anything like that. Let's continue. Now that you have the backstory, again, this was like 4 or 5 years ago. At the time this happened, I was like 20 years old, and I'm 25 now. This was around the time where OF was getting really popular. It wasn't exactly popular yet for what it's known for.
Wait. How did OF just enter the chat? The story's getting wild.
But it was around that time where it was getting there. When it comes to certain situations, I look at things for what they are and not what they are portrayed to be. Looking on there, of course, OF doesn't promote itself as that type of app. So when I made it, this was around the time I was heavily chasing my music career. If you know me, you know I used to rap and sing and all of that stuff. And I was heavily trying to pursue being a rapper and a singer. I was deep into my music career, like really trying to thrive and make a living off of it. When I saw OF, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is a perfect outlet to put all of my behind the scenes content on here, exclusive music videos, photo shoots, never before seen photos or unedited photos from my photo shoots. I had this whole big plan to put all of that stuff that I didn't normally share with my supporters or my Instagram followers on there. That is what I was using OF for. I promise you, that was it, and that was all.
Okay, so obviously we're all shocked about the OF entering this conversation, because we all know OF is not just used for that particular reason, behind the scenes, photo shoots, this and that. But I have heard, to give her some credit, I have heard that other people use OF in different ways, right? I've heard it. Let's keep listening.
So on my Facebook, only my family is on there. There may be a few of my friends or associates or people I went to high school with, but for the most part, it was only like family members. I posted the OF link on there, and I specifically put in the caption, what was on there. So just thinking about that, even if I was doing that type of OF content, why on God's green earth would I post it on Facebook for my entire family to see? If I was doing that type of content, obviously I'm not going to put it on Facebook. I get
Fair
this
point.
Facebook message from my pastor. He's
All right.
like, oh, like, wow, like you have an OF. And I was like, yeah, you know, I'm posting all of my music videos. I had a music video that I had just shot that I didn't release yet. I was giving like my supporters and like my family and stuff a first look at that music video. None of my music videos were explicit or anything. Yes, I was definitely cursing and stuff, but none of my music videos had nothing crazy in it. So then I get a new subscriber. My family, they're really, really good about supporting my music. This was not uncommon. I didn't find this weird. I was actually like, oh my gosh, I'm getting another subscriber. There was only like 5 things on there. The music video and like the behind the scenes of that music video.
Bro, don't tell me the pastor subscribed to her OF, bro. Don't tell me the pastor subscribed to her OF, bro. Let me not find out this is where this is headed.
So he liked all of them. And then he inboxed me and he said, oh, I have a question. And I was like, yeah, what's up? And he was like, is this the only content that you post on there? And I was like, well, that's all the content I have on there for now. I'm getting ready to post some other behind the scenes from this other photo shoot that I just did. So I don't know when I'm going to upload it, but I'm going to upload that on there soon. Then I'm also shooting another music video soon, and that's going to be up there as well. So I tell him that, and he was like, oh, okay, that's it, LOL. And I was like, yeah. Mind you, I did not know that OF was turning into a P app. I was completely oblivious to it. And not only that, it was still on the rise. Like, it wasn't predominantly that yet. And if it was, I had no clue because I'm not into that type of stuff.
So she says she's 25. That was around like 2020, right? OF was kind of, it was in the rise at that point.
I'm reading his message like, yeah, that's it. Like, what do you mean? I'm thinking he's about to give suggestions about other type of music content that I can put on there or something like that. But he comes out and say like, oh, you ever thought about doing any other type of content for her? And I was like, any other type of content like what? At this point, I'm starting to say, surely he's not talking about that. Surely he's not talking about that. There's no way he's talking about that. So I'm just in denial right now because like I said, he is in the family. This man watched me grow up. And my siblings and him and my daddy at one point was like this. Also, like I said, we did up and stop going to this church out of nowhere. And we joined a different church. My parents, they never told us why. They never told us what happened. We kind of knew something happened, but they never told us why we stopped going. Remember that? Because it's going to be important later. It was like, LOL, you know what content I'm talking about. Nobody wants to see the content that you have on there now. Like, who's going to subscribe to see that? So I'm like, I didn't know how to respond, but at the same time, I didn't want to run with a narrative where I think he's talking about something and maybe he's not. So I didn't accuse him of anything. I just left the message alone. I didn't respond to it. Then he double texted me like an hour later and he said, oh, I could pay you for the type of content that I want to see. Right there, I'm like, he's definitely talking about what I think he's talking about.
Right. This is where I get a temperature check, guys. Comment down below if you, okay. Because I think a lot of you are thinking, okay, I already know where Chisha's going to go with this. You might be surprised by my take. I'm more curious to know what you guys think down below. Right off the bat, how believable does this sound to you? Because I'll be honest, to me personally, and this is a personal stance, I believe this shit, bro. I believe the story wholeheartedly, almost. You may be asking, Chisha, there's a bit of bias there because you can't wholeheartedly believe this. The amount of stories that I have personally witnessed when it comes to churches and the pastors and how these pastors have crossed the line is uncomfortable. Plain uncomfortable. I've heard story after story. And if you've been in the church, you know this too. You know this. We know this isn't new. And part of me kind of wonders, because this is my perspective, my honest perspective. You know what? I'm going to save that for after we're done here because we're almost done. She's almost done giving her side of the story. You're allowed to disagree, man. That's the awesome thing about the coffee pod. You can say, bro, I don't believe it. Listen, I lean towards believing this story for sure. Some of these pastors are freaks, should not be up there pastoring anyone, in my opinion. But of course, guys, I'm curious to know, you're honest. Just keep it real in the comment section down below and tell me what you think. Right? This story's getting wild.
I still wasn't running with it because I didn't have proof. He didn't come out and say that. And if anything got out, I knew that he could deny it. Because back then, the church folk that he had surrounding him were like diehard churchgoers who would back him up to the ends of the earth. If I ever would have came out with this, I would have had to have severe, concrete audio and video proof of this. That's
right.
How deep they was going for him. I'm like, what type of content are you talking about? And then he says, I want to see you naked.
Oh, when I get my sound effects back, I'm not going to overdo it, but I will. I'm missing it. You guys know. You just hear it in your head. It played in my head. What in the world is going on with these churches?
Literally said, did you mean to send me this? And he was like, yeah, LOL. And I was like, do you know who this is? This is Blank's daughter. I said my father's name. He was like, yeah, I know who this is. I know who this is, LOL. Like, I just want to see some content of X, Y, and Z. He then started being descriptive with the type of content he wanted to see, and even made an offer to see me in person. And so I was like, so you know that this is Blank's daughter? And he says, yeah. And I was like, this is Shawnee, like little Shawnee.
Right.
And he was like, yeah, I know who you is. You ain't no little girl no more, LOL. I immediately called my father. Immediately called my parents. And when I got them on the phone, I was crying. Because I'm like, there's just no way that this man who's supposed to be family, who literally saw me grow up, like, dude, like, you baptized me and my siblings. You were in my house. I used to spend the night at his house with his daughter. I'm like, wow, like, you really is a creep. Both of my parents was livid, but they also had this side in their voice where they weren't surprised. I was like, why kind of sound like y'all not that surprised? Like, of course they was extremely mad, but they wasn't that, like, surprised. We're still talking on the phone, and I go back to the messages because I'm like, oh, nah, I need to show them proof. Of course, the messages are gone. All you see is everything he ever said unsent. I had no proof, but of course, my daddy and my parents, you know, they believed me. Of course, they're not those type of parents. They believed me. That's when I got the explanation on why we really left the church.
So that's the last part of the video there. Now, there's a part 2 to this. We're going to check out some of these comments that I know are going to be crazy. Before we do that, I'm going to give you my honest take. I tend to lean towards believing this story. Again, I've seen this plenty of times. Now, I know we're going to get the comments of, this isn't new, this has been going on. But I personally also believe that this is getting a whole lot worse. Especially nowadays, when you have more women in the church than ever and less men, more men in the church who are, because this is what happens, right? Pastors would do this. And you heard how she said her parents reacted in a way of that was more casual, where they kind of sighed. Why? Because there were probably rumors that the man was kind of a creep. Most churches have heard rumors of a pastor doing this. And I'm not talking about, oh, it's just a rumor, nobody knows. No. I remember one specific church. I actually attended this church. I wasn't a consistent member to the church at all, but I attended it once in a while. I had found out that they forgave the guy, the pastor in the church, for doing the same thing. Now, this is different. The guy I'm talking about, who's pastor in the church, actually followed through. And he was married at the time. And he actually ended up smashing one of the chicks who was in the church. So what do? They decided to show grace and forgive. Hey, okay, cool. I disagreed with that. More on that later. And when I say I disagreed with that, that was me hearing how the situation played out later on. I wasn't there, right? I'm hearing about this church. I'm like, okay, interesting. He does it again, right? He does it again, not with somebody in the pews. This time it was with a female pastor, a fellow pastor. Not only does he do it again, he gets her pregnant. Oh my goodness. That was a bitter cup of coffee for the whole congregation to drink. And my controversial stance when it comes to this point is I personally believe that there's some struggles the pastor shouldn't have. I'm sorry. I'm not asking for perfection here, but if I'm going to attend a church, and I haven't had a church that I attend consistently in a while, but I don't want this to be the struggle that, hey, do you know that this pastor struggles with the clapping fellow members' cheeks? Like, can that not be the struggle? And while this might sound crazy to people who hear this, I think we can put this in other occupations. And I'm not calling the pastoral position just any other occupation, but let's be honest here. No one wants a pilot who has a history of drinking too much and DUIs. No, thank you. This is why you probably can't. And I'm almost certain here. I'm assuming that if you have had a DUI, maybe they forgive you after some time. But if you've had a DUI recently, you probably aren't able to do something like Uber. There's certain struggles, again, that I just don't want somebody in a certain position to struggle with heavily. Now, that doesn't mean that the people in the audience are, you should go and be a freak. No, but I do think that what's the saying? Come off a bit cheesy, but with great power comes great responsibility. I am consistently amazed at people who want so bad to lead the flock and take a position where, they're leading people and sharing the scripture and pastoring a church when they're struggling with stuff like this. You feel me? Do I make sense to anybody? Please comment down below if you agree, which is why, by the way, I was raised in a Christian home. And if you were raised in a Christian household and went to church regularly, wonderful things. Every mother has that dream of like, you're going to be a pastor. I was like, not me. And it's not because I didn't think it was a worthy position or cause. No, it's because I was thinking like, I don't think that I would suit that position because of the responsibility it came with. I don't want it. And at some point, and I used to think, if you pray for that, then God's going to give you that. So you better, your mind starts playing tricks on you. But I just personally think it's crazy how much people play with that position. And I've seen it so many times. And I can only imagine how often it happens now, seeing as how desperate a lot of these chicks are of marriage. Just desperate, to find a husband. And, that pastor is in a position of power. So they look up to him. There's already that weird dynamic going on. Yeah, man, I just don't think people respect that position as much. I'm a sinner, and I'm not saying I try to sin, but I don't need anybody looking up to me as a way, like, follow my path. No. Mistakes are made here just like every other human being, right? Let's check out a few of these comments and see what people have to say. Of course, guys, I'm curious to know. Don't forget to leave your thoughts down below. Top comment says, no background story needed. I believe you immediately. Somebody else here says, screenshot. I know she said that she couldn't go back and actually find those messages. I don't know if the Wayback Machine is still a real thing, but you could still get some of that stuff back. Somebody else here says, the way people idolize pastors is an issue. Pastors are humans. They are fallible. This is so disappointing to hear, but not surprising. This is true. I'm not saying the pastors, by the way, I'm not saying that they should be perfect. That is not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that. I'm sure the pastors get tempted with this all the time. I'm talking about the type of situation that she just outlined, right? The type of situation where that this has been going on and other people know that this is something that the pastor struggles with. I've seen this countless times and people are kind of like, well, Let's show grace. Let's forgive. And then he claps some more cheeks. Then what? Then what? My main point isn't to say that pastors should be perfect. It's to say that I think needs to be a more strict qualification, and somebody maybe needs to step down if they cross that line, right? Because then you have an environment where men won't take that guy seriously. You know, I'm looking for somebody to pray for me. You know what I mean? So I don't go out here and look for some cheeks. Do you understand? Let's read a few more comments here. Somebody else says, what is OF? Wow. Good for you. Here's another person who says, background story. Babe, you won us with the intro. Somebody else who says, pastors, ministers, etc. are people. The church view of them is unhealthy. That view has allowed many of their issues/sins to go unaddressed. That's an interesting perspective. And so because they don't look at them as people, then they don't want to address it because it's like, oh no, I don't want to ruin his reputation. Yeah. Nah. And a lot of people don't know that the whole structure of the way church is done today is really man-made, right? If you look at the early church, they met in groups of people. Church wasn't a structural building. It was groups of people coming together to worship. People have church all the time without knowing it. Somebody else who says, wow, a priest stalked me 25 years ago. I should gain some strength and tell that story. Somebody else here added, I didn't need the backstory, babe. I believe you. Stat. Here's another person who says, praying for everyone hurt by him. You are brave for sharing your truth. So in all honesty here, unless he actually did do something with somebody else, he didn't actually commit a crime, technically speaking, based on the story that she outlined. Now, let's talk about the weirdness in all this. Watching her growing up and doing all that puts him in the category of like potentially a lot sicker than he might have been in this situation. Doesn't sound like anything came of it. She said, hey, we left. So from this story alone, you know, because here's why I say this, right? People will say, why doesn't she go press criminal charges? She didn't say she was essayed. I guess if she wanted to be loose with that translation, she could say that, but it doesn't sound like that's it, right? What would be lost there is reputation, which is justifiable if you ask me. All right, guys, that's it. Listen, of course, I'm curious to know what you guys think. I was going to do the part 2 thing. Let me know if you guys want the part 2. I'll include it in a different video.